are conditional statements. So one thing is clear right here that I can use these conditional statements. Like I can say that these conditional statements can be used to decide which action should be taken. Like, for example, if you have different actions or if you have different conditions and if you want to put into that, so with the help of these conditional statements, you can decide that which action should be completed. Conditional statements like you need to understand, like for example, if this is a condition, what is a condition? For example, I have kept your class from 3 to 4. This is a condition. That means that if the time is from 3 till 4, then only our class is going to be conducted. But similarly, if the time is no other than 3 till 4, like for example, if it's 1 to 5 or 6, that means that the class is not going to be conducted. सो कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स, कंडीशंस मीन्स के आप अपनी किसी कंडीशन दे रहे हैं, मतलब आपको जो है वो किसी किस्म की जो है एक लीगलिटी या किसी कंडीशन के ऊपर आप बाउंड कर रहे हैं। सो दिस इज द प्लेस वेयर आई यूज कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स। कंडीशनल स्टेटमेंट्स के अंदर बेटा यू कैन इवन सेट योर different actions or different course of sets. You can set it in terms of your conditional statements. We have two types of conditional statements. The first conditional statement that I have right here is your considered as your if then else and if statement. If then else and if. One thing should be clear right here that what are conditional statements? They are used to decide that which action you want to take. And if you want to refer to different actions. And the first example of a conditional statement is if, then, else, and if. This is simply like, for example, if, like if means that what if the condition is going to be. Like if this is the case, then you can do this. So this is quite simple. You can even understand it like the way it is written. For example, if means that I'm referring to a condition that if this is the case, okay, if this is the case, then what is likely going to be the condition? And just in case if it is not the condition, then what else you can do? And then you can add that. So for example, I can say right here that if your age is greater than 18, age is basically a variable, then you can output or print onto the screen, for example, that you are a child. And just in case, if this is not the case, then you can output that you are an adult. And if. So right here, you can actually see a context, a syntax of that. Like for example, this is the first area of this if, then, else, and if. Like this starts from here, it ends from here, and you can actually see the way that I have written it here, like if, then, else, and if. So this is basically the first example of your if, then, else, and if. So you can even let me give you another example since this is a quite simple one. So for example, if I say that this is your second example of if, then, else, and if. So this is your example, if, then, else, and if. We can even make any program, like for example, if found is equals to true, then output successful, else output not successful, and if. So this was the first example. This was the second example. And similarly, you can also make statements like, for example, if your height is greater than 1, or your weight is greater than 20, and your age is greater than 70, and your age is greater than 5. This means that right here, I have given a range, right? So if this is the case, then you can output that you can play this game, else output too small or too young, and if. So these are some examples of this. So in this example, as you can see that the parameters I have given here is, first of all, that if your height should be greater than 1, or your weight should be greater than 20. Like this is a boolean operator that is being used right here. Or means that one thing has to be followed. Like, for example, if your height should be greater than 1, or your weight should be greater than 2. But similarly, this is an and condition. And condition means that both of them has to be followed. Like this, for example, this is basically a range. Like, for example, your age should be less than 70 but greater than 50. So if this is a case, then with the help of this if condition, that means that you have set some parameters here. You have set some values here. You have set some conditions here. That, for example, if this is the condition, that means that you can output this onto your player screen, that you can play this game. Else, you can output that you cannot do that. So this is the first example. Like I have used here and or. You can use other boolean operators as well. Like I have and, or, not. Any confusion in this?
सर boolean operators क्या हैं?
Beta, boolean operators are and, or, not, true, false. मैं आगे चल के वो भी यहाँ पे कहीं पे लिखवाता हूँ आपको. यहाँ तक कोई कंफ्यूजन?
नहीं.
Example 1, example 2, example 3, and now let's work on another example for your if then else and if. So for example, let's say, acha, you need to understand that there are two different areas. One is your programmer's end and one is your user's end. So for example, if you are writing this like output, you can play this game. तो आउटपुट प्रोग्राम यूजर की स्क्रीन पे नहीं आएगा. आप आउटपुट तो सिर्फ जब लिखते हो जब आप प्रोग्रामिंग करते हो. यूजर की स्क्रीन पर सिर्फ ये मैसेज आएगा. लेकिन प्रोग्रामिंग में बताना पड़ता है ना कि ये प्रिंट हो रहा है, ये आउटपुट हो रहा है. सो दिस इज द एरिया वेयर यू हैव टू राइट दिस. So let's work on to another example. So the first thing that I am doing right here is that I am outputting a value. And why I am doing that? So that my user would know that what he wishes to do. And the first thing that I have entered here is that output, please enter your marks. Now the user is going to enter the marks, but where that marks are going to be stored, I need a variable. So for that, I have added this input, and the name of that is your percentage marks. Now, after this, you can you can use the first loop, you can add your condition. Like for example, if the percentage marks are greater than 0, or your
सर इनपुट परसेंटेज मार्क्स को कोट करके नहीं लिखेंगे?
quote करके, beta quote, you only use this quotation marks when you are writing a statement. Let me clear this, that whenever you are working like this output, so you use this quotation marks only when giving, producing, or displaying a sentence or comment to your user. इन्वर्टेड कॉमा से होता यह है कि इट मीन्स कि आप जो चीज लिख रहे हो वो एज इट इज आपके प्रोग्राम में आ जाती है। तो आप हमेशा ये यूज करते हो सिर्फ कमेंट, सिर्फ इसके साथ, जब व्हेन यू वांट इट टू बी प्रेजेंट इट टू योर कंज्यूमर, कोई भी सेंटेंस हो आपके पास, कोई भी आपके पास मैसेज हो, तो आप सिर्फ ये तब यूज करते हो। लेकिन जब बेटा मैं आपके पास ये वेरिएबल यूज करता हूँ, तो वेरिएबल के अंदर मैं ये नहीं लेता, क्योंकि वेरिएबल एज इट इज नहीं आता, उसकी वैल्यू चेंज होती रहती है डिपेंडिंग। कोई कंफ्यूजन यहाँ तक?
तो सर परसेंटेज मार्क्स इनपुट इनपुट करेंगे तो उसको कोट करके क्यों नहीं लिखेंगे?
बेटा परसेंटेज मार्क्स को हम इनपुट लेंगे तो उसको कोट नहीं करेंगे। अगर मैं उसका सेंटेंस लिखूंगा कि आउटपुट प्लीज एंटर योर मार्क्स, सिर्फ तब कोट करेंगे, इनपुट में
ओ
नहीं करते कोड। यही बता रहा हूँ, आउटपुट में जो मैसेज होता है, जैसे यहाँ पे मैंने ये आउटपुट किया हुआ है प्लीज एंटर योर मार्क्स, तो जो सेंटेंस, जो मैसेज तुम आउटपुट करते हो, सिर्फ उसको इन्वर्टेड कॉमा में लोगे। अगर तुम वेरिएबल को कॉमा में नहीं लेते, परसेंटेज मार्क्स एक वेरिएबल है जिसके अंदर वैल्यू आएगी, जो वैल्यू फिर आपकी इस रेंज से कंपेयर होगी। इन्वर्टेड कॉमा सिर्फ जहां यूज करते हैं जहां मुझे एज इट इज मैसेज उठा के डिस्प्ले कराना होता है। समझ आया?
जी
जैसे कि ये लिखा है ना आउटपुट, ये क्यों लिखता हूं मैं? ये इस वजह से मैं लिखता हूं, जब मुझे एज इट इज मैसेज आउटपुट कराना हो, ओनली यूज व्हेन प्रोड्यूसिंग अ डिस्प्ले और गिविंग अ सेंटेंस टू योर यूजर। लेकिन यहाँ पे तो ये
सर,
वेरिएबल है। जी
जो हमारा आउटपुट है वो यूजर के लिए इनपुट होगा ना?
हाँ, जो हमारा आउटपुट है वो यूजर के लिए इनपुट इस तरह से होगा कि सबसे पहले यूजर को स्क्रीन पे वो नजर आएगा, उसके बाद वो उसमें एंटर करेगा मार्क्स।
सही।
इज दिस क्लियर?
यस।
ग्रेट। अब जैसे हमारा ये आउटपुट है, यूजर को ये नजर आया, तो हम कह सकते हैं कि उसके लिए ये एक इनपुट है, क्योंकि उसको समझ आएगा ये। इसके बाद हमने लिया कि इनपुट परसेंटेज मार्क्स इफ द परसेंटेज मार्क्स आर, ये अब ये वेरिएबल के साथ मैंने ये कंडीशन लगाई इफ के साथ। अगर ये आपकी कंडीशन है तो आप क्या करो, यहाँ पे आप यहाँ पे आउटपुट कराओ कि अगर ये कंडीशन है तो जो आपके मार्क्स हैं बेटा वो क्या है, इनवैलिड। ये यूजर को बता दो कि आपके जो मार्क्स है वो इनवैलिड है। लेकिन अगर ये नहीं है तो आप क्या कराओगे, एल्स। अच्छा, अब यहाँ पे मैं नेस्टेड लूप यूज कर रहा हूँ। नेस्टेड लूप ये होता है कि फॉर अंडरस्टैंडिंग नेस्टेड, अपने जहन में एक नेस्ट का वो इमेजिन करो। नेस्ट कैसे होता है हमारे पास एनिमल्स का, जो बर्ड्स होते हैं। फॉर एग्जाम्पल इट्स समथिंग लाइक दिस, मतलब ये कि एक दूसरे के अंदर जो है वो लूप हुआ हुआ होता है, लाइक लाइक एन एग्जांपल ऑफ अ नेस्ट और समथिंग। इसी तरह से जो ये वाला लूप है, अब मैं यहाँ पे एल्स करके आउटपुट एक और मैसेज नहीं लिखूंगा, मैं इसी के अंदर एक और लूप लगा दूंगा इफ का, और वो मैं ऐसे लगाऊंगा कि एल्स के बाद अब मैं यहाँ पे लिखूंगा अगेन इफ योर percentage marks are greater than 49, then output inverted commas pass। इसके बाद एक और else लगाया, then output fail, और फिर एंड इफ। लेकिन बेटा ये वाला जो एंड इफ आ रहा है ये आपके पास इस वाले लूप का आ रहा है, लेकिन आपके पास जो पहले एक लूप था उसको भी आपने एंड करना है जो यहाँ पे चल रहा है। तो इसका जो एंड इफ होगा वो आपके पास आएगा यहाँ पे। तो दिस इज बेसिकली एन एग्जांपल ऑफ अ नेस्टेड नेस्टेड इफ देन एल्स एंड इफ। जो पहले आपके पास यहाँ चलता है इफ देन एल्स एंड, और उसके बाद ये यहाँ से शुरू हो जाता है। लेकिन सिंस ये खत्म नहीं होता तो दोबारा से इसका जो ये वाला एंड है वो मैंने यहाँ पे लगाया। सो इज दिस क्लियर द सिंटैक्स ऑफ दिस? इसमें कोई प्रॉब्लम?
यस। नहीं।
ये है नेस्टेड इफ देन एल्स एंड इफ। So far, these four examples, are these clear to you?
यस।
Perfect. I'm moving on to the second conditional statement because I have two conditional statements as far as your syllabus is concerned. And the second conditional statement that is right here for me is going to be your case of otherwise and case. And right in this example, what I usually do is that this basically gives me a choice. Like I have the choice. Like for example, I have many options and I want to select among a different options, or I want to select among different choices, like what is the best for me. So when I have a different values, I at one place I use this because it gives you a choice between different values so that you can use this case statement. So case is basically like, for example, if you want to do this, you can follow case one. If you want to do this, you can do case two. If you want to do this, you can case three. So let me give you an example of that right here. Like for example, this is basically a case of grade. Like for example, in this case of grade, you can see that if your student has secured A, that means you need to output on the user's screen, excellent, well done. Similarly, if you have the case of B, that means that you need to output good. And similarly, if you have the case of C, that means that you have to output average. And just in case if there is none of the cases like this, so you can actually add it like this, like if this is not the case, then otherwise output improvement is needed, and case. This is an example of a case, like for example, if A is the case, if B is the case, if C is the case, then you have to work on to like this. Similarly, I can give you another example of this right here. This can be your example too. Now, in this case, this is basically a case of choice. And the choices that are listed here is the first choice. That means that if someone is selecting the first choice, that means that whatever is his answer is going to be, this is going to be an addition of number one and number two. For example, if his choice is two, that means that the answer is going to be number one minus number two. For example, if the answer is three, that means that his answer should be number one multiplied by number two. And for example, if the answer is four, that means that your answer should be number one divided by number two. And just in case if you have not selected and if your answer is not among these four choices, so that you can actually write an statement here. Otherwise, you need to output, please enter a valid choice, and then you need to add that. So this is your case statements, and for writing a case statement, first thing is that you need to declare that this is a case, and then you need to declare that what is the case of. If you are working onto a grade, you are going to write that if it is a grade, if it is a choice, and then you are going to give your choices. Like for example, if you select one, this is going to happen when you answer it. Both of the numbers are going to be added. If it is going to number two, number three, and number four, and so on. So this is basically just a loop, an example. That means that the values of the variable decides the path to be taken. Let me write it like this, like here as well, that right here, the value of the variable decides the path to be taken. Like these are some different paths that you have given right here. So it's up to you that which path you say you want to take. But just in case if your value is not specified, then you can work on to that otherwise case. That means कि अगर वो चारों वैल्यू नहीं है तो otherwise करके आप अपने ऑप्शन को लगा सकते हैं. And last में the thing is that is means that you need to end your case as well. That is right here. So do you have any confusions in this? Any confusions?